Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our last topic, how to gain pricing power. If you aren't able to join us and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on my YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. If you'd like to receive notifications on when they've been uploaded, please like and subscribe. Now, let's learn a little bit about our guest today. Jackie Cote is a freedom mentor, speaker, and RV adventurist who helps hyper-driven, successful people who already have money and success, but don't have a life they love. After working with Jackie, they learn how to awaken, empower, and own the powerful leader within so they can create the life they truly desire of freedom, adventure, and love, and fit the money and success into that life. Jackie is a Jersey girl at heart who comes with 30 years of leadership management experience in the restaurant industry and has helped over 300 people move to higher levels in their career and life. Jackie took the leap into entrepreneurship by creating a fully virtual coaching business and is now living out her dream of freedom and adventure by traveling the country in an RV with her man and 2 pups, meeting virtual friends, and changing lives on her terms. So Jackie, welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here, Candy. Thank you for having me, and thank you to your audience for being here with us, too.
Well, it's going to be a fun topic to discuss. Who doesn't want to have freedom and vacations, right? But
I would think so, right?
I know, right? But before I get into any questions I have for you, I'd love for you to tell me just a little bit more about yourself and how did you get into doing this coaching?
Excellent. So as you heard in the bio, the 30 years in the restaurant industry, one of my favorite things, people ask me all the time, how did you last that long? Because it's a very hard working 12, 13 hours a day, 7 days a week, nights, weekends. But there's this piece of loving the mentoring and coaching of people to the next level and holding them to holding that gift of belief for them up until they get there and helping them get to new places, higher levels, more money, and helping them create technically more freedom in their life for their families, for their whether it's more money, more time freedom, whatever it is. And I loved it. But then at the end of the 30 years, the last few years, I went into a corporate office position, and that was really weird for me after being in operations and working with people. But I was it was a challenge. I wanted to learn. And towards the end of it, the last 2 months, I had met the coaching industry. And I don't know about you, but coaching for me was football coach, soccer coach. I didn't know this whole world existed, right? Of mindset coaches and all these things, but it opened my eyes to a lot of possibility of doing what I was so good at and putting it into my own vehicle and doing it on my terms, my time, my everything. And so I started the journey on learning about it. And then 2 months later, the company I was with let me go. They fired me. They walked me out the door like a criminal. And I always laugh. I'm like, I'm pretty sane, but they have to follow the things. But I remember driving home, my hour and a half drive, and going, wow, I feel so relieved. And I was it was one of those aha moments. It was the best day of my life. Scary, but it was one of the best days of my life because I wouldn't have quit that industry because I knew it. I knew it so well for so long. Right. But I had this other possibility that I've been able to see now that in the coaching world that I didn't see before. So I felt okay, I can actually go into entrepreneur. I always wanted to. I always wanted entrepreneurship. I always wanted my own business my whole life, but I just didn't know what that vehicle would be. I thought it'd be a restaurant. That's crazy. But thank God I didn't do that because I was very tethered. You'd be very tethered to your world. And that's what began the journey. So I did all my schooling and I took a lot of time off. A key point in this was for me was that I took 6 months off after working 30 years. We only had 2 weeks off a year. And that freedom, once you see it and feel it, you cannot go back. You
Right?
cannot go back. So it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it, that saying. So I
Mm-hmm.
felt that for 6 months, and then I kicked in and built what I have today. So that's how the journey started, was I tasted it and I just was never going to go back to a job.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening, whether they're entrepreneurs still and they just want to have more freedom in their business, because there's this concept too. You own a business, right? You could go golfing whenever you want to. And that might be fine for like the big corporate CEO. But for us everyday business owners, we're probably working a lot more than we really were in a job before. So it could be someone like that. Or maybe there's someone listening now who still is an employee, but wants to have a little bit more freedom. So what would you say really is that definition of freedom across the board? And how can people get where they have more freedom than what they really have right now?
I really appreciate you bringing that up, because the mix of my clients, I always thought I'd be in the just helping the entrepreneur, right? And then I ended
Mm-hmm.
up, most of my clients are employees who have been doing 20 years or so in the same career, plus 20, 30. And they have like the success, the money, like you mentioned earlier, but wasn't exploring life as much, wasn't
Mm-hmm.
doing the creativity, like you said, the God, like that kind of stuff, and didn't have the life they truly loved. So no matter where you are, there's a version of your freedom life that you desire. It starts with visioning that. It starts with
Mm-hmm.
letting yourself dream that it's possible to have those things and putting yourself into that place. But then the other piece is, I talk about time freedom, money freedom, location freedom, all these things, but those are the external tangible things that comes from that internal um, worthiness, enoughness, self love, and that. And really, that's what holds us back. There's stories
Right.
that we have that we need to rewire to know that we are worthy of saying no at 5 o'clock and shutting the computer. We are worthy of the schedule we desire, and we do deserve that. And if we desire it, we're meant to have it. And so it doesn't matter. I have people in every one of those realms you just explained in my client
Mm-hmm.
base, and you're right, every single one of them has the ability to step into more freedom, but it starts with the vision. I call it awakening. You have to awaken like
Mm-hmm.
that vision inside of you, because we let that thing be dormant because we think we should be doing this. We're supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
doing this. This is the right thing to do. This is the safe thing to do. I watched my dad work 80 hours a week in his own business. It
Mm-hmm.
We have 8 kids in our family. I'm the only kid that took a step into entrepreneurship because they saw my dad work like crazy hours, tethered to his business, watch the business go up and down. They were like, I'm not going into that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so now I've kind of changed that vision, changed that story that my dad had, to the point where now I decide my schedule. I decide when I work. I decide, like, I designed it because it was a desire of mine. But I got to tell you, that wasn't easy right out of the gate coming out of the restaurant industry. Like
Right.
I was used to all the hours.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I
So,
think someone who's listening who maybe is the only one in their business, whether they're even, let's say, a coach or something too, or they're a freelance, graphic designer, whatever it is, but it's just them and their company, they might feel a little bit easier about creating that freedom and just saying, hey, I'm going to take off some time, whether it's a week at a time or a couple of weeks, and letting my clients know, and it's not a big deal. But someone maybe who has employees underneath them might feel, well, if I'm taking time off, my employees are going to feel, I'm not here. Why do I get to take time off and they don't get as much, even if you offer them, opportunities for time off too? You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you feel like the
mhm,
employees are expecting you to be there all the time. So how do
mhm,
you, as an entrepreneur, deal with that? It may not even be true, right? It may just be their own issue.
mhm.
But how would they deal with it if, number one, it really is true, where the employees still feel, well, you're the big boss, you should be here all the time while we're working? Or if it isn't true, how do they overcome that challenge in their own mind? So either way, they can get some time off.
The great question. It actually very much mirrors what I did for 30 years in leadership management in the restaurant industry. As a leader, there's many of us who never took our vacations. We just
Mm-hmm.
worked right through them. We thought that if we worked 15 hours a week, and there was a point like midway in my career where I was like, it doesn't have to be this way. We get
Mm-hmm.
to work smarter, not harder. That saying, right? We get to, and so For me, it was a learning of like, I have to lead by example, that your time for yourself is just as important as teaching them the skills of the business. It's just as important to teach them that your life and like the
Mhm.
life around your work is part of the business. It's part of having, the whole picture. And
Mhm.
so it started there. I was the one who, we were told we had to work 55 plus hours. We got the job done, and I taught my managers how to get the job done in 40. And as long as like we were hitting the things we were hitting and this and that, and we were, and it might drive my boss crazy, by the way. But I was like, so what are my numbers like? They're great.
Mhm.
Okay. So why do we need to stay longer if everything looks good, And so carrying that into entrepreneurship, it's whatever you believe, we attract and we create in our life everything that is in our life.
Mhm.
And we attract what we feel worthy of.
Mm.
So when we can change the belief behind the worthiness of us having a life, it gets to be this and that. Like, you get to have the success, the money, the business, and a life. It doesn't have to be what we've maybe been taught or ingrained or seen or experienced. So rewiring that belief takes some time.
Mhm.
But when working with somebody on that, to be able to rewire the beliefs that believes that that's what's necessary. And then your employees start to, you're actually helping them create their future as well.
Mhm.
And so, and all of that, I have three pillars: awaken, empower, and own. And that empower pillar is about communication and boundaries. And a lot of, when proper communication and proper boundaries are set, they learn the same thing. Then they
Right.
carry on, just like children and parents, they carry on those behaviors of boundaries and communication as well. So,
Mhm. Right. So you talked a little bit earlier too about the entrepreneur having this vision pushed down or having it dormant, not really thinking about it. So if someone's listening now and says, you know what, that's me. I've been working all this time thinking I really don't deserve, or I can't fit it in because there's so much to do. So they haven't even thought about what that vision would look like. What would you tell them? How do they go about actually bringing this out into, let's think this through. What do we want? How do they do
mhm.
it?
Yeah, let me tell you, that is the number one. So if that is you and you're listening, that is super common. So don't think you're alone in that, because one of the hardest things is when you go from what you're describing into this, what I used to think was the woo-woo land of, when you step into that, it is weird. It's awkward. It's like,
Mhm.
I get to have dreams. I get to have visions. Wait a second. And so that goes through a lot of, basically, my job is to help you think differently through a lot of questions. And a lot of
Mhm.
the questions come around the senses, of really helping somebody think, like, okay, some people are like, well, I don't know, I just want to have enough money at the end of the month, right? And if they can think only beyond that, be like, okay, so if you did have more money at the end of the month, what would you do with it? And then they
Mhm.
start to think like in small layers. Then I'm like, what would you see? What would you hear? What would you feel? What would you smell? And they always laugh when I say that, because I'm like, if Italy is where you want to be, you're going to smell some cool stuff probably, right? Because of
Mhm.
the food there. But
Right.
you're raising like that energy behind what the sense is, because
Mhm.
feeling is what changes the belief. Feeling, having a high energetic vibe feeling, along with the repetition of the vision. And really, that's why the vision board alone can't be a vision board. There has to be like a repetition of looking at it and feeling it, and like
Mhm.
really just feeling and sensing yourself into it. And I never did this until 3 years ago. But then I had this vision board and I had all this travel on it and everything, and then COVID hit, so all that travel kind of stopped. And like,
Right.
but then the RV was never on the list, but it was part of the travel I always desired, and to be able to be free and go places. And then all of a sudden, like, we see this RV America TV show, and that sparked an interest. And then, because the universe and God put things in your way right in front of you to show you things. And so once you open up and awaken those senses to what it is you truly desire, and let yourself play, because everything's inside of us, and we
Mhm.
had it since we were babies. We were born with infinite value, but then all sort of things started blocking it, and started like coming up, and changing what it is that we were just naturally born with. And we're just reawakening it, and we're just
Mhm.
bringing it back up. And then, but you got to feel it. So an example too is I used to bring my laptop to the lake because I want a lake house with a mountain view, and I used to take my
Mm.
laptop to some community lake with like the
Yes.
little bench, and I'd be like, I love my lake house, I love my view, I love my, like this is mine. So one day that will happen for me once I'm ready to settle down. I'm not ready to settle down
Hmm.
yet, but putting yourself into places, and it doesn't have to cost a dime sometimes. Sometimes you can
Right.
spend money to put yourself in it too.
That's true. Well, and it could just be too, like, I just want to have more family time, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean you have to travel. It means you have more time just with the people around you or your friends, or you want to be able to exercise more because as entrepreneurs, we often don't take care of ourselves, right? Because we're working so much. So whatever those goals are, right? It doesn't have to
Mm-hmm.
be just because I want to go on a vacation. It could be like different things that are going to improve our lifestyle altogether, right? So we're not
Mm-hmm.
just the entrepreneur.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's
you know
important.
the biggest freedom piece for me was the freedom of the chatter in my brain. Early
Mm,
on, we have so much chatter for whatever our thing is. For me, it was there was a lot of chatter of I grew up pretty much by myself from 7 on in a lot of ways where it was like I had to make all my decisions myself. So loneliness was a big abandonment, and loneliness was one of my things that and then there was this piece of regulating emotions, which I think is pretty common. And I
mhm,
went through one of the ways I dealt with that was through an eating disorder, and that was like secret to everybody. But there was so much chatter in my brain around that,
mm,
and when I eventually healed, like and realized that this is my story, I want this to be my story. I was able to replace it, change the thoughts, and oh my gosh, how much time I got back in my life from all of the thinking. We all have something, whatever it
mhm,
is. And when that's true freedom, that's when my freedom really began. It, like you said, it wasn't all the travel and this and that. That came as a byproduct, but that freedom of just letting whatever it is that we are building massive chatter around the stories of what it is that we're anxiety, when we learn how to release that and fill that with fulfilling nourishing things like more family time, like walks or walks
mhm.
down the street with your whatever it is, taking a bath. When my coach said go
Right.
take a bath as part of your business, I was like, what do you mean take a bath as part of my business? She's like, you got to learn how to be. You know how to do, and you
Mhm.
know how to do to have, but you're not being. I was like, what do you mean being? I'm here. That's the woo woo.
Right.
But the being is part of the business. So when you say they just want more time with this and time with that, that's learning how to be, which is a
Mhm.
crucial part of the business.
That's so true. Because again, I think as entrepreneurs, we have our to-do list. We have this client work has to be done. And then I have to, write my newsletters. I have to check email. I have like do,
Yes.
and we
Yes.
don't
Yes.
think about the things that are going to really help us rest or, just have downtime, because
Mm-hmm.
I know we're all, especially with COVID, a lot of people started to worry like my business is going to decrease because people aren't doing, as much as they did before. And so I need to work harder to keep my business where it is. Right. So instead of
Mm-hmm.
having freedom, they're even putting more on themselves. So hopefully, this discussion too really lets people think through, okay, it's, we've survived, right? The last few years anyway. It's not as bad as we thought it might be. And
Right.
we need to change and value ourselves just as much as our business, right? And actually have
Mm-hmm.
some of those boundaries that maybe we were not so great at doing. So if someone finally is listening to this and saying, okay, great, I know I need to make some changes and I want to implement this, where do they begin? How do they start?
Ah, so I'm going to tell you a funny story real quick about September 2019. I was like filling as an entrepreneur, I was filling my schedule like head to toe, soup to nuts, like Sunday, every day, just like the restaurant business. So I was just repeating my employee my management schedule, and and I would turn to my coach and I was like, this is great and I'm really tired and I'm not making any money. And I
Mm.
was like, what am I doing? Well, there was one piece was I wasn't making offers. So note to self, make offers, tell people what you do. But the other piece of it was that I was just doing, and I wasn't being. But she didn't know. She was like, she wanted to somehow show me that versus just telling me, right? Because I'm one of those like, I gotta understand it. So she said, October, you're going to do nothing. And I was like, what do you mean nothing? She's like, you're not going to add anything to your schedule, what you already have on your schedule. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, there's going to be gaps? And she's like, I was like, what do I do with all that? She's like, you're going to go B. And so we made a list. So I walks to the lake, calling a friend, listening to read a book, listen to music, cook, whatever it is that's nothing to do with your business, right? And for someone like me who was 24/7 work, 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 like I treated my jobs like an entrepreneur. Like I was nonstop in my jobs. And so um so that month I went from 1,000 as a new entrepreneur to 3,000 that month. I was like, okay, that's coincidence, right? And then she's like, let's do it again. So we did it again the next month, and my schedule just kept getting smaller. And she asked me a question that month. She's like, what do you want your schedule to be? I was like, Monday through Thursday, 10 to 4, nothing else. Ha ha. Like no nights, no Fridays, no weekends. And I giggled and laughed. And she's like,
Mm.
okay, put your availability in like that into your like system. My system I had. I was like, okay. I mean, she's been right. She was right quite a few times up to this point, so I was going to trust her. And that month I made $2,000 more than that. So I made 5,000 and my schedule was less. She's like, let's try it one more time. And then it went up another two. And I was like, how does this work? I'm doing less and I'm making more, right? One, I was making offers, but two, the piece that I was, the being part was helping me energetically align with the right people into my life. And that's where you step into this like faith and belief and all that other stuff that's not tangible. We can't see it, but you got to trust that the being is just important, like we were saying earlier, the doing, the having. And so now that is my schedule. It's actually a little less because of all the RV traveling we do, but I come from a background of like a million hours a week for many, many years and a father. For me to say that it's possible, let me tell you, it's possible. But it's
Right.
changing the thoughts and the way you think about it. That's the main thing.
Well, and I think too, if someone is listening to and thinks, okay, well, I'm going to not do this much work. I'm going to, take the time and I'm going to walk around the lake or I'm going to do whatever. But I know a lot of people are probably still thinking like, I have to check my email on my phone. I'm going to have to, respond to social media. So they're not really stepping away, right? They think they're not necessarily, I'm not
They're
sitting in front of my
multitasking.
computer, but I'm doing all these other things still. So can you encourage them? How do you really step away, leave behind some of the work? You're not attached to the electronics. You give yourself some of that downtime.
It comes back to, what do you really desire your life to look like and be like? What do you want to be experiencing? Because if you say you want free time and then you go for a walk and you're listening and checking emails and doing all those things, does that really align with what it is that you desire? The second thing is deciding that you're going to have this in your life and change this belief that you have to be 24/7. And then you got to just trust and do it. And then watch turn. I like to say to my clients, and did you die? Did anybody die? No, the emails were still there. I was still alive. I got to breathe in fresh air for 45 minutes and everything moves on. And most of the time when you're in that state is when you get the call that someone wants to be your client and you just got more business because you were being. I can't tell you how many times I've been on vacation in a pool, I don't know, traveling with the RV, and then I get a call from somebody who wants to join my business. And I'm like, and who are you? And where'd you come from? But it came because I was in an energetic place. And I know that's hard to hear when you haven't, there's like some work I've done to get to this place, but this energetic place that I was willing to receive it. And that happens more and more on the times when I'm in the energy of joy and love and fun and that kind of place. And then it happens and it gets to be easier when you're in that zone. So I encourage you, just do small steps too. Let me just add that in there. Don't try to do the 25 things you hear from every podcast and Miracle Morning and everything. Like, morning routine, do one thing at a time.
Right. Exactly. And you're more prone to stick to it then too, because if you try to do too much at once and then you're not successful, you're going to be like, oh, it just doesn't work for me. Right.
Exactly. Your brain's like, too much change. Stop.
So when you were changing your schedule and you were putting more things in for yourself, right, and downtime, did that require you, or would it require someone, an entrepreneur potentially, to delegate to someone else, or did you just become more efficient at what you were doing? Like, because someone might be listening to this still and saying, well, yeah, I can add more into my calendar for me, but then things aren't going to be getting done. And I'm, worried about that.
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on the structure of your business. Definitely, if it's more than you, if you're a solopreneur, it's one story, but similar at the same time. Um, the first question I ask most people that come into my world is, what do you like? Let's look at what you need to release. What do you need to let go, release, delegate? If you have people to delegate it to, great. If you have to hire somebody like a VA, and I know for me, it was like, I don't want to put that money out. That's more money out, right? But then how much do you get back when your time is free
Right.
to do what you're really great at? So another, then there's money stories to work with. But that's it, delegate, let go of control, stuff like that. That all comes into play with the employee side. If it's a solopreneur, there can be efficiency and of the execution and everything, but then there's more of the, how do I say this, trusting that you're enough and you're doing enough and you're being enough. um if you really broke down like how the day went, like, and how much you technically got done, and if you took out the things of like, I got to be busy, 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 right? If you really like, one time my boss had me like log every 5 minutes, which I wanted to shoot her because I was like, this is too much micromanagement. But it really opened my eyes to like every 5 minutes of a day, like, what are we really doing? And there's just so much like if you're constantly like, I gotta click the email, I gotta click the email, I gotta click the email. But if you did all the email in one block, and then you went for a walk for the other block, you probably get just as much done than clicking the email, instant gratification, instant gratification, instant gratification. I'm cleaning it up as I go. Could have done all of that in 15 minutes and had the other 15 minutes to take a walk, whatever it is that you want to do. So, to be honest, every person's different and unique. And I don't believe that there's one system for everybody. I believe that it has to be aligned with you. Everyone has different magic in them. And for me, like, I'm the last minute girl. And I used to get so much trouble with my bosses. They'd be like, you're not organized, you're not this. But it always was spot on once it was executed. Great, fabulous. There was never any challenges, but they hated that I waited to the last minute. But for me, my magic has always been in the last minute, like talks the hour before. Okay, this is what's aligned. This what feels good. I know the people better now. Boom, I'm going to put the talk out. I'll have a title, but I'll put what I'm going to put in it. My papers in college right before the class, like, like,
right.
And I was always, you're not organized enough. You're not. And now when I talk about the third pillar of my business, it's like, you own you. When you find that that's where your magic lies. So to give a cookie cutter answer, I'll never be able to do, because every person's different. So that's why there's a lot of questions to find out. How do they think? How do they learn? What aligns with them? What are they doubting in themselves? That's really their gift,
Exactly. Well, even as you were talking, I was thinking that might be another reason why someone is afraid to kind of let go, is they're not going to do it right. They're not going to do it my way. But as long as it's getting done on time, effectively, right, you don't have to panic. And so it's probably just as entrepreneurs, us training ourselves to be able to let go. And someone's going to make mistakes at first, right? When they first, are taking over something. So being willing to work through that, but realize they don't have to be the same as you, as long as it's still getting done. And I think that's one of the things that will help people be able to release some of the tasks that they're currently doing, to free up some time and just realize it's going to be okay. Right.
Yeah. And there's another piece to it that I don't think people realize if they haven't done a lot of leadership management. It's kind of the first time they've had overseeing somebody or an employee to boss. There's an empowerment. There's a feeling from giving somebody the empowerment to do things, and keeping them in the process with you. And there's this like, for me personally, there's just such an amazing feeling when someone's like doing stuff for you that you help them get there and they are loving it, and they're like, I'm freer now, and they're having a good time. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
It's like
they've been able to grow.
Feeling.
Yeah,
you've given them opportunity, and that's oh my gosh, that feels so good to me. And I have no employees right now, but it makes me think, do I want to build a team now? Now that I'm talking to you about it.
Exactly. Well, this has been a great discussion. I've really enjoyed the conversation, but I know we're running short on time today. So I want to ask if you have an offer that you would like to share with our listeners and how they can connect with you.
Awesome. So I back in my corporate America days, very much the goals that we set were SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic time, very masculine energy. And there's something that was always missing for me, so I'd never really do them. But the piece that was missing that I found now is the intention behind the external goal. The external goal never makes us happy, whatever it is, whether it's money, yada yada. The internal, I look like an angel every time our door opens in the RV. The internal feelings, the experience, everything along the way to the external goal is what was missing for me. Like, what am I gonna like what am I gonna enjoy along the journey? Who am I gonna who are we gonna impact, and blah blah blah. And the freebie is called intentional goal setting, because when we set intentions and feelings and fun and joy along the journey to the external, then it doesn't matter when we hit the external. It just, we had fun the whole way, whether it's 7 days from now or 30 days from now. You might hit it quicker because you're having more fun along the way. So the freebie is a video explaining that, and how do you set that month to month goals but have more fun with it. I literally get markers out and I draw a picture, and then I have all this writing out, which my A-type personality clients laugh at me. They're like, crayons, markers, and I'm like, trust me. And then they do it. They're like, oh my gosh, did you see my design this month? And they have these colorful things, which is out of their comfort zone, which becomes this magical, like, childlike way, because we were fearless when we were kids, right? So that's the freebie. And in the video, if you want to go deeper, you have any questions on it, there's a link to get on a call with me, a connect call with me in the freebie. And to reach me, I have my website, which is Jackie Cote Coaching, which is awesome. But do you really want to get to know me, just get on my Facebook and become friends with me, because my Facebook personal wall has been my digital diary. And it really is everything about me. And literally, I had somebody at my retreat last week grab my shoulders and go, you are literally the same thing. I could pop you out of Facebook and this is you, and here, and I put you back into Facebook because you're exactly the same person. And I pride on the fact that, like, I really just have, like, something happens in my life and I share it with you on there. I travel to another state, I have a program, I have a retreat, whatever it is, and I just share it on there. And that's how most people get to know me digitally before they meet me on a call or whether they meet me in person. So come be my friend, and then tell me that you met me on Candy's show so that I can shout out Candy.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Jackie, for being on my show and talking about this. This has been a fun discussion too, because I'm sure a lot of people really want to be able to implement this. And so I appreciate your taking the time.
Thank you for having me, Candy. I really appreciate it.
And to the listener, thank you for tuning in. And I hope you found this topic interesting and that answered some of your questions about stop waiting to turn your freedom vision into a reality. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to Jackie or send us a message at media@abandp.com. I hope you can join us for our next episode, the easiest and most scalable tech system to succeed with digital marketing. And please remember, you can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. You can also find the podcast posted on multiple favorite podcast platforms, including iTunes, TuneIn, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And would you please share our show with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? I'd really appreciate your support. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.